Hey everyone, before we dive in, don't forget to smash that like button, subscribe, and hit the notification bell, because what you're about to hear is one of the most chilling near disasters in aviation history. This isn't just another story about planes and pilots. This is a real-life thriller that unfolded in the skies above Morocco, where a routine flight almost ended in tragedy because of shocking decisions inside the cockpit. And trust me, once you hear how close it came to ending in flames, you'll want to stick around until the very end. On July 9, 2018, passengers boarded Royal Air Maroc Express Flight 449 with no idea that their lives would soon hang by a thread. This wasn't a giant Boeing or Airbus, but a smaller ATR 72-600 turboprop, registration number CNCOH, operated by Royal Air Maroc Express, a subsidiary of Morocco's national airline. These regional flights usually connect smaller cities or hop across short distances to neighboring countries. On this particular evening, 54 passengers and 4 crew members were preparing for a quick trip from Tangier to Hoceima, a coastal city on Morocco's northern shore. Nothing unusual, nothing dramatic, just another flight. But weather has no sympathy for human schedules. As the plane prepared to land, the skies over Hoceima were wrapped in thick, blinding fog. Visibility was near zero. For seasoned pilots, this should have triggered strict safety procedures. You can't land if you can't see the runway. It's Aviation 101. The standard response would be a go-around, pulling back up into the sky and either trying again or diverting to a safer airport. Here's where things took a terrifying turn. The captain of Flight 449 was 61 years old, with more than 13,000 flight hours under his belt. On paper, this was someone who had seen it all, but experience doesn't always guarantee judgment. Instead of playing it safe, this captain pushed forward. He brought the plane down to the minimum descent altitude, 760 feet above the ground, without actually spotting the runway. And then he kept descending. At 400 feet, still blind in the fog, he was taking a gamble with 58 lives. But that wasn't the worst of it. The plane's ground proximity warning system, the GPWS, is designed to shout alarms if the aircraft is dangerously close to terrain or water. On that day, those alarms were going off. The system was doing its job. The captain, instead of listening, switched it off. Think about that. The one piece of technology meant to prevent controlled flight into terrain, one of the most common killers in aviation, was silenced because the captain thought it was false warning. Passengers had no idea what was happening up front. Some may have been staring out the windows seeing nothing but gray fog. Others might have been gripping their seats as the aircraft jolted slightly in turbulence. But as the ATR continued its descent, the unthinkable nearly happened. At 60 feet above the sea, the plane skimmed so close to the surface that it actually struck the water. A sickening jolt ran through the fuselage as salt water sprayed into the undercarriage. Then it hit again, this time at just 45 feet. The landing gear and fuselage scraped against the sea, and salty water seeped into equipment. Inside the cabin, hearts must have stopped. Passengers probably felt the unmistakable sensation of impact, the gut-churning knowledge that something had gone horribly wrong. For a few moments, it looked like Flight 449 was doomed. If the plane had dipped just a few more feet, it would have broken apart on the water's surface. A crash so close to the city would have left almost no survivors. And then came the human drama inside the cockpit. The first officer, the co-pilot, realized they were in imminent danger and called for a go-around. He wanted to abort the landing and climb back to safety. But the captain resisted. There was an argument, caught forever on the cockpit voice recorder. Imagine the tension. One pilot insisting on pulling up to save lives, the other stubbornly pressing on. Every second of debate dragged the aircraft closer to disaster. Finally, the first officer's determination won out. Against his captain's wishes, he initiated the climb. The ATR roared back into the foggy sky, shaking off the near-death brush with the sea. Instead of risking another attempt at Hoceima, they diverted to Nador, a nearby airport with better conditions. And when the plane touched down safely, every passenger walked away unharmed. No injuries, no fatalities, just a cabin full of shocked, shaken souls who may not have realized until later how close they had come to dying. But the story doesn't end with relief, because what followed was an investigation that pulled back the curtain on just how recklessly this flight had been handled. Morocco's Bureau of Investigation and Analysis, the BEA, examined the cockpit voice recorder, flight data, and damage to the plane. What they discovered was chilling. The captain hadn't just ignored safety procedures, he had actively broken them. He disabled a life-saving warning system. He descended below the minimum safe altitude without the runway in sight. He pressed on with an unstable approach, violating his airline's policies. And when it was over, he even tried to cover it up, telling air traffic control that the aircraft had been struck by a bird. Investigators found no evidence of any bird strike. It was a lie, an attempt to mask his own mistakes. For aviation experts, this case became a stark reminder of why rules exist in the first place. Flying is one of the safest forms of travel, not because pilots are superheroes, but because the system is designed to prevent individual errors from becoming disasters. But when a captain ignores that system, safety breaks down. Imagine being a passenger on that flight. Maybe you had booked a vacation in Hoceima. Maybe you were traveling to see family. You boarded expecting a short, uneventful trip. Instead, you found yourself within inches of catastrophe because someone in the cockpit decided to gamble with your life. After the investigation, Royal Air Maroc and its subsidiary had no choice but to act. Training was reinforced, monitoring of pilots was tightened, and strict orders were handed down. Follow procedures, no exceptions, because in aviation, trust is everything. Passengers trust airlines, airlines trust their pilots, and when that trust is broken, the consequences can be deadly. And yet, the story of Flight 449 is also a story of resilience. Against the odds, no lives were lost. The co-pilot's insistence on pulling up saved everyone on board. That single decision, to stand up against his captain and break the deadly chain of errors, turned a disaster into a lesson. Looking back, it's almost unbelievable. An aircraft scraping the sea twice, systems damaged, salt water corroding its guts, and yet still climbing away to safety. The passengers, stepping off in Nador, may not have realized they had just walked out of one of the luckiest escapes in modern aviation. But here's the takeaway. Aviation rules are written in blood. Every regulation exists because of accidents that came before. And when those rules are ignored, history has a cruel way of repeating itself. Flight 449 came seconds from being another headline, another memorial, another scar in the history of flight. Instead, it became a warning. So next time you step on a plane, remember this story. Behind the calm announcements and polished uniforms, there are strict procedures in place to keep you safe. And as long as they are followed, you can sit back, relax, and trust the system. But when they're not, well, then you get stories like this one. If you found this documentary gripping, make sure to like, share, and subscribe. Leave a comment below. Have you ever been on a flight where something felt off? Did you ever experience turbulence or a sudden go-around that made your heart skip a beat? We'd love to hear your stories. And don't forget to hit the notification bell so you don't miss the next jaw-dropping aviation mystery. Because this was Royal Air Maroc Express Flight 449, the flight that kissed the sea twice and lived to tell the tale.